Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Welcome back. Conservative estimates say that over 50 million people, adults in the United States today, live with chronic pain. I'm one of them. I really am. And I've mentioned some of these issues over the years. Chronic pain is one of the top reasons that people go see a doctor. Chronic pain is also at the root of the opioid epidemic that we see today in this country. I read an article that said 99% of opioid addiction is because people go to the doctor because they have chronic pain of some sort. And the doctor gives them drugs and, Tylenol stops working and this stops working. Next thing you know, they're giving them opioids and that works. Then they have to keep increasing the dose and increasing the dose. A childhood friend I lost 3 years ago. He was in a horrible car accident. He actually ruptured his aorta. He was lucky to be alive. They got him to the hospital in time, but then he was addicted to opioids for the rest of his life, and that's what killed him. Opioid addiction kills you by literally rotting your body. It really does. Digestion changes, digestive motility changes, the ability to absorb nutrition. You don't have the energy to move. You don't really want to do anything. Forget about working out. And it really is the root of death. It's very, very sad. And we have a lot of people in pain today for different reasons: car accidents, injuries from training, compressions in the spine. There has to be other alternatives than just opioid type drugs. There has to be. And there are lots of doctors on the front line that are looking for alternatives. And we're going to be talking to Dr. Amy Baxter, returning to the show today. She was the one who we just did an interview about using nasal spray, nasal saline, to mitigate some of the hard effects of COVID-19. Before we do that, we have to thank our title sponsor. Legendary Foods makes snacks safe to eat again. Less than 1 gram of sugar, 20 grams of high-quality protein, 4 to 5 net carbs. Their new sweet roll is ridiculous. You'll think you're eating a Cinnabon, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary. Use the code SHR10 to save 10% off, and also let them know that you heard about them here on the show. And check out the tasty pastry and the sweet roll today. But buy twice as many if you have children, because your kids will end up eating them all before you get a chance. And without further delay, Dr. Amy Baxter returning. How you doing, Dr. Baxter?
I'm fabulous. How are you doing today, Carl?
I'm great. I enjoy having you on the show because you have a very, very natural, raw way of explaining things. And
my filter is very low. Is that what you're trying to say?
Look, my wife tells me, like, there's a part of your brain missing that stops you from saying what you're thinking. But that's the way I operate. I just say what's on my mind. And you kind of have that a little bit too. You just go right. You just called me a dummy a second ago.
Yeah, that's scam. Myself doing that.
But it was.
No, I said something you said was dumb, but I wouldn't have said that you were a dummy.
Yes, you're right. Thank you. So when did you become interested in possibly helping people manage pain without opioids?
Well, first I want to I'm funded by the NIH right now by the National Institute of Drug Addiction. And so I want to clarify that 80% of people who become addicted to opioids get them from pills that were prescribed for pain.
Okay.
So one of the biggest things, and probably the 99% thing you're thinking, is that at least 90% of people who are prescribed opioids don't finish them, and then they're sitting around in their cabinets.
Oh, okay.
So that's
Thanks for the
that's
clarification.
the real deal, is that when people start to misuse opioids, over 70% of them get them from a friend or a family or somebody who had it in their medicine cabinet, but they were prescribed for pain originally.
Okay,
Where
gotcha.
I got interested in
There's
this,
just an abundance of them out there, and people are taking them inappropriately. So I
oh
get
yeah, so Dreamland, if anybody's really interested in how the crisis got started, Dreamland is a fantastic piece of investigative reporting by Sam Menendez, who speaks fluent Spanish, and so he was able to get to the root of the 4 reasons why we have this opioid issue. So I personally didn't get interested when my best friend from high school passed away because of an opioid overdose. And I didn't get interested because I was just furious. I was just couldn't understand what an idiot she was to get addicted, and felt very much like it was a weakness, that it was preventable, that it really was an indictment on her character. So some of why I'm doing what I'm doing now is kind of out of penance for delightful, sweet Sue Adams, who had a genetic predisposition to substance use and likely had it from her mom. She was adopted. And that genetic predisposition that about 15% of people have makes most substances, from cigarettes to specifically opioids, makes them more enjoyable and also makes them not last as long. So if you get an opioid and you have this particular metabolism pathway, you get super great feeling and it feels awesome. And then the pain comes back really hard, fast. And that's what makes people afraid and makes them want to take more. And that's where that opioid, that's where the substance use disorder stuff gets going, is people who feel nauseous and stupid and sluggish with opioids don't tend to get as addicted because they aren't getting that rush or high, and some people genetically do.
So, full disclosure, I in 1978, 79, I started doing heroin. I was working on the racetrack at Belmont Park in New York, and the trainer I was working for, who's today a very successful trainer, so I'll leave his name out of it, but he said, the owner didn't pay him, and he was going to pay me next week, and then he handed me a little thing of tinfoil, and I figured it was Coke because people used to put Coke like in tinfoil like that. I opened it up. It looked like coffee grinds. It smelled like vinegar. I says, "What's this?" He goes, "It's Mexican brown." And so I started out, snorting Mexican brown, and I really enjoyed it a lot. I realize now that I've had underlying anxiety most of my life. I don't have it any longer. But when I was young, I lived in some really, really rough neighborhoods, and maybe I was self-medicating, but I really enjoyed heroin. It made me just feel free.
Yeah.
But it did make me sloppy and sleepy, and I didn't like that part of it. So I can relate to what you just said. I didn't like. I liked speed. I liked, black beauties. I liked amphetamines much more than I liked opioids. Yeah.
You were in the Lou Reed, the total Lou Reed and Factory phase of New York.
Yes. I was really, I have a storied life. I really do have a storied life. But anyway, so when people first get addicted to opioids, is there an off ramp early on? Like if they did want to get off, they could before the addictive neurological brain changes actually take place. Is there a chance to get off?
Yeah. So in some ways, the brain changes are already there as an underlying situation. And so the important thing is just to not start if you have that predilection genetically. But one of the things that's really cool about what we're learning now from the Help End Addiction Long-Term set of grants that went to NIDA and the NIH is that there is a very time-sensitive period when acute pain turns into chronic pain. And for years they've defined this as, chronic pains when it lasts 3 months or more. 3 days is the time period where acute pain starts a pathway in the brain going to chronic pain. And it's 3 days when the pain is untreated. So there are a couple interesting things to know here. One is that if you treat pain adequately in the trauma bay immediately after an injury, so the more morphine you get when you're immediately injured, the less likely you are to have PTSD, the less likely you are to have prolonged pain and chronic pain. So there is a period of time immediately after the injury where on the battlefield, the incidence of PTSD in warriors, this was published in 2010, and from Afghanistan. So the more wounded people got the right kind of pain management in the first 24 hours, the better they did long term. The correlation between opioids and addiction is actually an outpatient phenomenon for a couple reasons. But 3 days of outpatient opioids is when your risk starts going up. That's why now there's a lot of different hospitals that are looking at not giving enough opioids to go beyond 3 days as outpatients and doing stuff called enhanced recovery after surgery, which is looking at a lot of different alternatives for pain management so that you don't do opioids in the first place. I got interested in all of this when I made a device for needle pain, and the device was called Buzzy, and I'm a pediatrician, and I made it with vibration and cold. Turns out it's a very specific vibration frequency. We can talk about that if you want to, but the concept was just like if you bump your elbow and you rub it, you can put this little device between where the needle's going in and your brain, and it will block the pain signal. Mm-hmm. One of my colleagues in emergency medicine used it to not take any opioids after surgery because he too had been addicted to heroin, and he didn't want to lose everything again. And so it worked. He had a total knee replacement with nothing but ibuprofen and Tylenol and Buzzy. So that was when I decided to quit practicing medicine and start learning more about opioid use. I had always been lecturing about pain management. That was my main research area. Once I started understanding through Dreamland and through the newer understanding of what Sackler has done, I started understanding where addiction came from, and it completely changed my view of what had happened to my friend. So that's where I ended up being in the position now of doing what I can in any way to support just not taking opioids to begin with in situations that are likely to lead to addiction.
Okay, let's go talk more about the genetic predisposition. Is it possible that if a person is the first one in their lineage who becomes addicted to opioids, or let's just say that area of the brain is super activated, and then they have children, is there a possibility that there's a transgenerational epigenetic effect that makes that child and even third generation, fourth generation more susceptible to becoming addicted? Or is it purely hardwired genetics? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, epigenetics is more exposure to an event changes the way you pass on the genetics to your child.
Right.
So I would not anticipate this being an epigenetic thing, because the epigenetics would require it to happen before you have a child. And right. So it would somehow turn it on. So I don't think that the metabolism would be changed in that way. I think it's more of a hardwired genetic thing. And so it's CYP2D6, which is one of the subset of liver metabolism. It's a subset. And so that's
one of the cytochrome P450.
Exactly. The cytochrome P450. It's a subtype of cytochrome P450s. And so the CYP2D6 is associated with increased metabolism. So rapid metabolism. So you're going to get both the rush, but also it's going to leave. And then you're in this period of fear. But I believe that it's more likely to be hardwired. And what people are looking at now is, what is the epigenetic contribution of trauma and anxiety and mental health disorders that are part of a predisposition?
Yes.
Along with this very specific metabolism pathway, and how much do they overlap? How much are they parallel and don't overlap at all, but both contribute? And that's a lot of what genetic work with substance use disorder is doing right now.
You know, I read a study just 2 years ago about a rat model study using dark cherry. And what they did was, it was like a Pavlovian approach. They took male rodents and they gave them dark cherry and they shocked them. And they kept doing this over and over again. And then they put them into a general population cage and had them mate. And then they took their offspring and they gave them cherry, and the male rodents freaked out. So that's when I realized that epigenetic, that's when I realized that intelligence is also passed along epigenetically. It's not just, hardwired, genetic, biological. It's like, that's why a baby deer knows how to fear a human being. It's epigenetically passed along. And that was fascinating to me. And
that's super cool.
Yeah. And that's when I started thinking about famine, depression, and alcoholism. If you look at the countries that have had real famine, like where they were picking up frozen bodies in Russia and bringing them in the house and cooking and eating them, and Ireland, during the quote unquote change from Catholicism to whatever it is. But anyway, when they had real famine, they all their food was taken from them. Those people pass on epigenetically that propensity to become alcoholics and to have higher rates of depression. And that, after reading that study about the rodents, I thought, man, we're passing experiences along to our offspring as well, epigenetically.
That is such an interesting, that's exactly what epigenetics is. So that's really an interesting study. So you're saying that without any contact with the male parent rats, the male pups, without any kind of a contact, still had this, reaction
to cherry. Yeah. And that's what I was saying. That's what I was saying. Like if a young child, obviously I had kids after all the drugs I did. Hopefully some of the LSD passed on to them. But, I'm wondering what of my drug experiences changed the shape of their brains.
That's really, I'm ADHD. My husband is dyslexic, and we have a potpourri of different characteristics that pass through to the kids. But I wonder how much my being an emergency doctor reinforced all of those ADHD characteristics to manifest more strongly in an epigenetic way with the kids. It really does change everything. It's so funny to think about how far we've gone from when I was studying, and I'm sure when you were growing up, Lamarckian genetics was what you make fun of and scoff at and bring up the elephant man as an example of how dumb that thinking is. And of course, now it's gone full circle to where, oh no, epigenetics is unquestionably playing a part of this.
So let's get back on the subject of pain. So the other question I wanted to ask you was, why is it that I never take pain medicine, ever? I'll take a Tylenol occasionally, like if something is unbearable and I just don't want to deal with it. But overall, I don't shy away from pain. I embrace it and I just move past it. But what is it about a lot of these pain medications, like opioids, that if your pain is a 6, you take an opioid, it's a 0, but when it wears off, it comes back as a 9. Why is that when the rebound greater than the original pain? What is it about the opioids that makes it amplify when they wear off?
Well, it doesn't actually do that if you look at the research. And of course, if we were in a regular environment, I've got a slide for that, and I can show you what happens with that.
Okay. Yeah, if you want to put it up, you can share it. You share the slide.
Sure. All right, let's do it. All right. So here we go from my computer. So which way do I do a present?
So you just present, and then I'll approve it, and it'll come right up.
All right, share screen. There we go. Okay. And if I can do a window. All right. So
there you go. I'm adding it now.
All right. So this is part of why pills are a really bad idea for pain. It's not because it comes back stronger. It's just that it isn't strong enough to be clinically effective. So studies show that on a 10-point scale, that about 1.8 is a clinically meaningful pain relief. And when you get to that clinically meaningful pain relief, it usually happens about a half hour after you take a pill, just because of the way all of the metabolism goes. One thing that's interesting is that for people that are getting IV pain medicine, if they know when they get it, they follow this same chart. But if they are given it randomly through an IV that has a pump that's programmed to give them pain medicine, the amount of relief is half of what it is when someone actually gives it to them. So this whole concept of placebo being somebody who is weak-minded or someone who is tricked into something, that's not what it is. The reality is that your brain processes pain with cultural contexts. So if you take a pill and you're trained that a pill is going to make you feel better, that's why a placebo works, is because it's activating the areas of your brain that are processing pain. But anyway, so you get the medicine, it goes up like this. And you've got a certain period of time before the medicine's out of your system enough that you need to redose, right? So in studies, these curves actually show where the pain comes back again. It doesn't come back higher than before. But what happens is that you have this zone where it's dropped below the clinically relevant pain relief, but you know that you can't redose for a while. So when you have pain, all of a sudden now, what's on board, the medicine that you still in your system, isn't enough to do anything, but fear increases pain.
Anxiety, yeah.
Increases pain. So the actual, from the physical standpoint, there's nothing different. It's just that the place where it drops below that area where you can do something, when you feel like the only thing you can do for pain is take a pill and you can't take it for another couple hours, your fear goes up, and so then your perception of pain goes up.
It's kind of like when you're trying to get your keys in the lock and you got to pee really bad. All of a sudden, you got to pee a lot worse.
Exactly.
Anxiety. That's so funny.
Well, and so that's one of the things that's so frustrating about the way our government works, is because we are suborned by both pharma and a medical system that works on multiple choice tests. So we have this very monocular view of medicine. There's one right answer. There's one thing that works or it doesn't. The way the brain works with pain is completely different. So insulin, I mean, even diabetes, actually, now we know that it's not just insulin, it's also how your gut processes the sugar when it gets it. And so there's multiple different things that work on the pancreas. But even something like insulin, which is yes, this is what your body needs if you're trying to digest food and get it into your blood system, that still has got multiple facets. And when you talk about pain, so there are about 12 different areas of the brain that are all involved in how you process pain. And what's fascinating is that depending on whether or not you're a chronic pain person or an acute pain, it's handled completely differently in the brain. And so that's part of why now we're understanding that you need to give people options. And what's stupid about the way we pay for things in the government is we really only are looking at binary solutions.
Right. You know what I just thought, because I invoked the topic of LSD a moment ago, but LSD, one of the attributes of taking LSD is synesthesia, where individual areas of the brain bypass the corpus callosum and communicate directly. And in fact, I met Timothy Leary in 1988, and we talked about this phenomenon. And actually, what he told me in 88 actually was proven true about 6 years ago. That's what happens. The corpus callosum, which is the clearinghouse, the right hemisphere, left hemisphere have to clear data through it in order to talk. And LSD allows the brain to just talk to the different departments. I wonder what LSD would do with pain because of synesthesia. Like you said, there's all these different areas of the brain that are being affected by pain. We think pain happens here or here, but it's all these different areas. And I wonder if someone was maybe mildly tripping and they had pain before the trip, how that would affect the sensation of pain, and what would happen when they came out of the trip. How would that affect the sensation of pain? I know you can't get an NIH.
No, I can actually. Yeah, I can actually, because that's part of the whole. In fact, I've got a slide for that.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah. So first of all, I think some of what Paul Stamets is looking at and the concept of using psychedelics to decrease anxiety and decrease a lot of cognitive misconceptions is because it's taking the sense of self and moving it elsewhere, which allows for the perspective, which can decrease it. So I do think that we're going to have a whole lot coming down the pike of using some of these perceptual changes. And what multiple groups now are doing is mapping where the brain is and what areas of the brain do what. So what this is showing, so it turns out that, I mean, a corpus callosum is really a connector. I don't know that I'd call it a clearinghouse, but it's a connector between the two different options. And so for pain, the CPU is more the thalamus, but then the anterior cingulate cortex, we're increasingly realizing is where the meaning of pain is arbitrated. So the ACC is a mitigator of cognitive conflict. So if you're trying to look at the words red, green, pink, and they're colored in different colors, your ACC is lighting up like crazy. It turns out when your ACC is very active, it decreases pain by half. So this is what virtual reality is doing. This is what we've got some card games that kids play while they're getting an IV stick, and it reduces pain by half if you give a task that is non-threatening. So pain is the brain's opinion of how safe you are. And how does it assess how safe you are? Well, you've got your pain that comes in and it goes through the thalamus and the ACC. And if you've had a lot of pain in the past, it's then going to go straight up to the frontal left cortex, which is memory of pain past. So your rat with his cherry chocolate thing, he's gonna, so the pain is going to be processed in that area where there's going to be catastrophizing, freaking out because of what's happened before with pain. Now, interestingly, adjacent to that frontal pain memory response area is one for balancing options. So this is probably why the more different options a chronic pain patient has, the better they do, because they can immediately start going, all right, well, I haven't tried that. I could try that. I've got this option. So they're less afraid of it. The amygdala, which is the light green thing in the bottom here, the amygdala is the fear center. And once it's triggered, amygdala hijack takes 18 minutes before it calms down again. But while it is up, it is enhancing that pain response, just like you said. So the other parts that are really interesting is that when you're focusing on pain and worried about pain, it gets bigger. When you decide intentionally to ignore it, then it goes away. And so there's something called acceptance and commitment therapy, which is you accept that you're going to have pain, you commit to doing the things that you value anyway. And doing that after 6 months was statistically significantly better for both adults and kids than doing gabapentin and medical management of pain. So all of this is to say it's complicated, but when you're looking at how you want to deal with pain, I certainly think that the concept of adding psychedelics or giving somebody a different way to think about something to move pain to a different place where they can handle it or tolerate it. Yogis do it. People with cancer can learn how to do it. So it certainly is within the realm of possibility, and it makes more sense that if you've got something that helps you jump the tracks mentally that a psychedelic might do, it makes sense that could be something that would help. This little graph, this pain diagram here also shows the placebo effect we were talking about. So what's interesting is that the connection for the brain in a non-chronic patient, pain is going to go straight through these two areas where your endogenous opioids, your endorphins are. So the periaqueductal gray and the ventral tegmental area are like first stop coming off the spine to the brain. But if you have chronic pain, you go straight past that into the memory and everything else. So, so it's all this is new stuff.
It's very fat. And so Taylor C says so much of this approach works similar to dealing with emotional trauma as well. You find that to be true? Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's because you're compartmentalizing, but you're also engaged with agency. So since I've started learning this and since I'm starting teaching about it, so I use the concept that fear and control are the volume knobs for pain. And so if you can feel like you've got control, if you know you can go in the other room and get something to make the pain go away, then it actually lowers your pain perception and it prolongs your tolerance. If you don't have fear of it, if you know why it's happening and know that it doesn't mean that you're never going to play golf again, you're never going to lift up your grandchild, whatever the particular fear is for you, if you know that's not true, then it also mitigates the fear. And so the same techniques for trauma, understanding where the feelings are coming from, parsing the feelings, knowing and having patterns of behavioral therapy that can address them. Many people are now saying pain is an emotion. And so pain is your brain's opinion of how safe you are. Pain is an emotion. It's just a matter of knowing what kinds of techniques you start with to address as you build up the ability to ignore and move past pain.
This is really great stuff. And I hope people pass this show around. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to start getting into the frequencies and how you got on this path to create this product, which obviously has clinical applications, because that's I joke around with Elisa, and sometimes I say my fondest childhood memory is not having lower back pain. Pain is a part of my life, and it dulls my life. I've had 2 surgeries on my left foot. My left foot is now 1.5 inches shorter than it used to be because I dropped a heavy weight on it wearing 5 fingers. The first surgery was botched. The second surgery got it right. But every step I take is painful, and I have to prepare myself. And, there are times where I'm like, I need to get up and go get the charger for my laptop. It's going to go dead. And I go, oh, fuck it. I'm not going to get up. I don't feel like dealing with taking that first step. So pain changes your life. It changes the way you live your life. So let's do this. Let's take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we'll get back into it with Dr. Amy Baxter. Stay tuned. You are watching and listening to Superhuman Radio.
Dogs should be powered by fat and protein, not carbs. That's why Visionary Pet makes low-carb, ketogenic dog food for dogs of all breeds and life stages. From kibble to freeze-dried and even low-carb treats, all Visionary Pet recipes are very low-carb, ketogenic, and made with 100% real meat protein. Shop now and use code SHR for 20% off your first order today. Your dog deserves the lifelong benefits of optimal nutrition. Make the switch to Visionary and see why smart dogs eat low carb.
Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today. There are lots of concerns about food supply today. That's why you need White Oak Pastures. White Oak Pastures will deliver food right to your doorstep. You don't even have to go out and be disappointed by shopping in grocery stores. The finest beef, pork, lamb, duck, and more can be found at White Oak Pastures. And now they even have seafood. And best of all, White Oak Pastures has a negative carbon footprint, which means that you don't have to feel guilty for eating your ribeye. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 15% off. P3OM from Bioptimizers is a patented prebiotic and probiotic supplement with Lactobacillus plantarum OM. It has now been upgraded to P3OM 2.0 with the addition of a superfood formulation that makes it 2 times stronger, as well as optimizes L. plantarum's strength. So it's more powerful than ever, which means that not only will it help you completely digest all animal proteins, it also reduces cortisol, causes deep relaxation and better sleep, and reduces stress. Go to shrnetwork.biz/P3-OM today and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off.
Move over, superheroes. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back. My headphones are sliding off. My head is so big, I stretch all the headphones out. even the ones I wear to the gym. I got to throw them away because they don't close anymore.
You're just packing so much in up there, Carl.
I don't know about that. I just, when I was a kid, I think my mother was worried that my body wasn't going to grow into my head. Anyway, so let's talk about your work now. So how did you decide to move forward and try to create a natural approach to managing pain? I mean, I understand what you've learned about pain, but why this direction that you took? Vibration, frequency, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Well, as an emergency doctor, and really the whole point of being a doctor is to mitigate suffering, right? So when I started it's to mitigate suffering, and it's also to be the one who does it. When I was a little kid,
Right.
I would sit on the stoop with a bottle of Mercurochrome and a Band-Aid and not hope that somebody got hurt, but hope that if they did, I was the one who was going to be there.
That is so effing cute. And I remember Mercurochrome. So that all the time on me, right? Yeah.
Right. And that's a total emergency doctor thing. It's like, no, you don't hope that the octogenarian bridge club suffers a terrible elevator accident. But if they do, you want to be the one who's there when they bring them in. So it's a fine line. But
Yeah.
I was always, and I still, I quit practicing medicine in 2016. People ask me what I miss taking the warm blankets to people who are on the gurneys waiting to be seen. I miss giving that bit of comfort and taking the fear away and making them feel like it's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I miss sewing things up and doing spinal taps, but I miss the comfort part and the suffering reduction. So I started with research in child abuse and PTSD, and then I did a child abuse fellowship, and I was an expert in burns. And when I went through my training and I was in the fellowship part, I realized that you could use a topical anesthetic to stop somebody from having pain when you're doing a spinal tap on a baby, but doctors weren't doing it. And doctors are very stoic about their patients' pain. My entire oeuvre early on was, let's change doctors' behavior, because doctors are where the gift of pain management comes from or doesn't come from. So trying to change doctors' opinions was where I started. When my son had a really traumatic vaccine experience, I thought, this is ridiculous. I am a doctor. I am in the field, and I can't stop pain from happening. And I can't, pain in a traumatic way. I mean, like an abusive bullying kind of way. So
Right.
That means that I need to figure out a solution that any mother can use for their kid getting vaccines. That's where the idea started. I knew that there was something called gate control, which was developed by Melzack and Wall in 1965, or was published then. And the idea is that you've got touch receptors that overpower pain. So there's 4 different mechanoreceptors. You've got your light touch, which is, stroking, tickling kind of thing. You've got pressure in the Merkel discs. You've got Ruffini receptors that are feeling stretching, like yoga and massage. And then you've got the Pacinian corpuscles, which figure out where your body is in space. In 2012, it was determined what kind of frequencies make all of these different mechanoreceptors fire. But in 65, all they knew was if you bump your elbow and you rub it, pain stops. Or if you bang your hand with a hammer and you shake it, pain stops. So in 1967, they tried implanting electrical stimulators in spines to trigger these touch nerves, to override the sharp pain nerves, and it worked. So since then, people have been trying to do all sorts of electrical stimulation to decrease pain. It turns out it's actually not the electrical, it's the touch part that matters. So what I was doing was trying to figure out how to replicate a running water sensation. You burn your finger, you stick it under cold water, instantly the pain goes away. That's also part of gate control. So lots of trying to do that. Very messy. I was using the inflatable, wiener dog balloons that clowns would use and trying to put water in it. Didn't work.
Right.
But coming home from an emergency shift one night, my hands were vibrating on the steering wheel because we hadn't bothered to get the tires rotated, because who has time for that? And when I reached the door of my house, my hand was still numb.
Yeah, right.
And so I was like, all right, vibrators.
Every every guy who rides a Harley Davidson like me understands this experience because
Yes.
your handlebars vibrate for hours on the road and you get off and your hands are numb. Yeah.
Get out. Well, see, if I'd been a Harley rider, then I probably would have solved this problem so much faster.
Right.
But so I gave it a go with the kids. We had this massager called a little personal massager I'd bought from a homeless guy when I was in residency, and we never used it, but put it on their hands and had this thing called a Wardenberg wheel, which is a pokey wheel that has spikes.
Yeah, it looks like a pizza cutter with
exactly. It looks like Satan's pizza cutter.
Yeah.
And so, but it's to determine which dermatomes, which nerve pathways are working and aren't for strokes and things. So tried that on their hands and it didn't work. So I was going to go to bed because I'd been up all night. And my husband said, we use frozen peas in the Scouts. So we put frozen peas on our kids' hands and then the massager. And then I did the little Wardenberg pokies. And it worked. And so that was when it was like, all right, never going to be Mother of the Year because I leave marks on my children and tell people about it. But B, we got something here. And again, it's this whole multimodal concept. It's not just the vibration, it's also the cold. So that was August 4th, 2004. I puttered around in my basement, stuck together different motors, different frequencies, got something that worked really well. And then my kids were using it for their shots. We were loaning it to people, but I couldn't use it in the emergency room because it wasn't an FDA cleared device. And at the time, I felt differently about placebos than I do now. I also didn't want it to just work for my children because of the placebo effect. I needed to be sure that it was really doing something physiologic.
Right.
Yeah. So my husband said, finally, he was like, look, how long will it take you to do this? How much time do you need? Why don't you just cut back your hours? And of course, that was 2006. And I was like, I don't know, a year and a half maybe. And
it always takes longer than you think it's going to as well.
Yeah. So over the time, I developed the Buzzy thing. So I had to get an NIH grant and start a company because I'd left academics and I was working on procedural sedation, like ketamine, fentanyl, putting kids to sleep to fix their arms in the emergency room. So I joined a private practice because of the database they had. So I had to then start a company because I wasn't eligible for academic grants anymore. I had to get a business grant and proved that we are more afraid of needles now because it's the experience when you're 4 to 6 years old getting booster shots. That was what was causing all of these kids to be afraid of needles. We didn't give boosters before the 80s. So you and I never got boosters, and most of people our age aren't afraid of needles.
I don't remember getting a lot of. I think I got the rubella. I got the normal one when you I didn't even get the horrible one. My sister got the one. I think they used a gun because it
the BCG
round circle on her arm. I didn't get that in 1958. I think I only got maybe 3 or 4 vaccines when I was a kid.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And you would have actually gotten them before you're 2. So you may, because of your giant brain, have remembered them, but most people don't remember stuff until they're about 28 months is when verbal memory develops. So anyway, so I made the thing and it worked. And then I did the research on it, found this needle fear, tried to raise awareness because what happens if we have a pandemic and people are afraid of needles and don't get vaccinated?
Right.
Like that would happen.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
like that would happen.
Well, that's I testified before HHS about this and said, look, 28% of people aren't going to get vaccinated. Here's what we need to do. And it was just too hard to imagine. Anyway, so then with this device, I didn't want to screw kids. So I made it completely reusable. I made it last forever and no disposable parts. And that's when I understood that our medical system is not set up to reduce costs. If you make a medical device that works better than topical anesthetics, but no drug rep or no device rep is making
no what do they call them? Lobbying group is fighting to.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, do you realize that chemotherapy has a lobbying group to keep chemotherapy as the standard of care for cancer? That is shocking to me.
It's so sad. Well, not only that. So if I had made it a subscription service, or if I had made it around $300, that's the amount it needs to cost for device reps to show people. But if you don't do that, the only way you can advertise is advertising. I mean, the only way people find out about it.
The only way you can advertise is like this.
Oh, oh, that was a great segment.
Drug-free pain solution, VibraCool Pro, Buzzy, and VibraCool. So I'm guessing Buzzy is for the kids.
You know, that was the other mistake that I made, was it actually works a tiny bit better for adults. Yes, it works for kids, but the frequency doesn't matter whether you're an adult or a kid. So I made it for kids because I'm a pediatrician, but people immediately thought it was distraction and not fairly sophisticated physiology and physics.
Right.
So we've changed the VibraCool design now to fit onto braces and to incorporate heat or cold, because after my neck injury, I realized that when you have chronic pain, heat actually helps reprogram your brain more than cold does. Cold's great for acute, but anyway, so I was on this this buzzy kick, and one thing I realized was that if the children were afraid, it didn't matter how much pain was lost. So all of these studies about decreasing pain with needles, by definition, are done with people who don't mind needles, or they wouldn't do the study.
And that makes perfect sense, because we talked about how pain tolerance changes when anxiety occurs. And you're showing the kid this big needle, like the kid's already in pain just looking at it. Wait, I want to make sure people get this. So we have two links: shrnetwork.biz/paincare takes you to the main website. However, if you want to go right to these products, you can go to, and this is a little long, explore.paincarelabs, that's plural.com/VibraCool, VibraCool. But you can get there just as easy, but then you'll have to go to the specific VibraCool products page by going to shrnetwork.biz/paincare. Natalie set that up before we had the VibraCare. But so this is amazing. And so, and it's really disgusting, because this product should be promoted as an alternative to drugs. And I understand that topical analgesics, they work the same way basically, but they're smelly and they're greasy. I mean, this is fun.
They're stopping sodium channels. So they're getting in there like lidocaine, and they're stopping the transmission of the A-delta pain with a sodium channel, as opposed to the gate control, which is sort of end running and going faster. But what is really, really sick is not the bit about Buzzy. What's really sick is that when we made VibraCool, there's a doctor that did a study with it for ACL reconstruction, and it decreased opioids 35%, and he would not publish it unless I gave him equity or money.
This is the shakedown. This is disgusting. You know, I don't even want to start bashing this stuff, because, you know, I've done it for years, but pay attention, folks. This is why you don't get access to the things that work that don't harm you. This is why.
And to go even further, so we're NIH funded. The FDA clears us, gives us indication to treat pain from muscle tension, muscle restriction, you know, like tendonitis, overuse injuries.
Yeah, overuse.
And CMS this summer turned us down and wouldn't pay for it because it's a comfort item. So I've got to do a whole new 2 sets of studies to get a new indication, just to change the name of it with the FDA so that it's capable of being covered. But again, because if it's not covered or super expensive or disposable, then doctors, then orthopedists, the people who prescribe it, are never going to hear about it.
Now, wait a minute. It's a comfort item. Pain relief is a comfort item. Any pain relief, that's what you're looking for. You're looking to feel comfort again. How stupid is this? It's semantics.
It's an old way of looking at medicine, as this binary thing. So when I was working in pediatric emergency, and after I made Buzzy, I got asked to talk about pain a lot. And so I went to all these children's hospitals, and I met this amazing woman named Regina Yoakum in Wisconsin, who is wheelchair bound, child life worker, helping kids deal with painful procedures. She herself had had over 100 surgeries for juvenile arthritis. This is what she taught me, and this changed my life and the direction that I went, because what she said was, look, here's how pain works. There's a very small, finite number of things that'll fix the problem. And whether it's surgery or time, that's they're not very many. You don't have options. And so then you start getting to prescription pills and drugs, and there's a bigger number, but there's still a very finite number, and they're going to cause problems. She said, but when you start getting to physical solutions, when you start thinking about massage, stretching, exercise, yoga, Vibracool, taping, all those things, there's a lot more options. But when you really get to thinking about what can I do to activate my anterior cingulate cortex, she didn't say that, but what can I do to make my brain occupied with something else? How can I talk to friends? How can I plan to watch a movie? How can I get all of those things engaged? Then she said, there's almost an infinite number of ways that you can block pain, and those options are what are important. But like magnesium is a phenomenal, it's an anti-inflammatory, it's an NMDA blocker. So it's actually, if you're on opioids, it can reduce by 1/3 what you need to take to get the same effect. It's a neuro anti-inflammatory, so great for migraines, and it's a smooth muscle relaxer, so lower blood pressure and better breathing with asthma. There's no lobby. To your point, people don't know this, doctors don't know this, because a lot of the research is recent, and there's no magnesium lobby to make this available.
Right. This is disgusting. You know what? This is why I hope to be off the air by 2024, because I'm so tired of this. It's just ridiculous. We have to take one last commercial break. We have a lot of questions from listeners. We're going to bring those up.
I got them.
And wrap up the discussion. This is fascinating. Again, let me just put this up one more time, because I want to make sure people see it and understand it. While this may not be the best link to get there, it will get you to the main website, and then you just have to look for the Vibracool products, shrnetwork.biz/paincare, or you can use this longer link and be taken right to the product page, explore.paincarelabs.com/Vibracool, Vibracool. Pain Care Lab. If it would have said Pain Labs, that would have been really interesting. All right, we're gonna take a quick commercial break. Stay with us. We'll be right back. We'll wrap up the show, and I'll get to everybody's questions in just a moment. Stay tuned. Merrick Health is a premium telehealth platform that connects customers with partnered providers from the comfort of your home. Merrick provides concierge service with your very own patient care provider as your health advocate. You'll go over all your needs and goals, from improving sexual function, hair loss prevention, increased muscle, fat loss, and overall improved performance. Prescribed treatment options can be ordered and shipped directly to you if you meet the requirements, all from the comfort of your home. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Merrick Health. That's MAREKHEALTH, and order your comprehensives and get 10% off with code SHR. Don't forget to add the lab analysis to have results reviewed with potential over-the-counter supplements or treatment recommendations. That's shrnetwork.biz/Merrick Health and use code SHR at checkout. Or order your own desired labs with code SHR and get 10% off your first lab order. I would easily say that I am the hugest proponent you will ever meet to doing anything that will improve the quality of my sleep. And that's because sleep is linked to just about every metabolic disorder we see in our population today. One of the easiest things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep is to get a pillow that can be shaped into the exact form factor that allows you to get your best night's sleep. And that is MyPillow. I've been sleeping with MyPillow for a few years now, and I can tell you that when I have to travel and stay in hotels, I don't get a good night's sleep because I don't have MyPillow with me. Right now, you can save up to 60% off of everything offered to improve the quality of your sleep at shrnetwork.biz/MyPillow when you use the code SHR. Or you can call toll-free 800 889-4938. And remember to use code SHR to save up to 60% off of everything at their website. There have been no real breakthroughs in resistance training for over 200 years. Whether it's pulleys or free weight, they all depend on gravity and the angles associated with gravity's effect directly on the weight. All of that has changed with the ARX machine. ARX stands for adaptive resistance. The ARX machine uses a 25 horsepower motor. You are literally fighting against a 25 horsepower motor, so every single rep is your 1 rep maximum at that moment in time. But ARX leverages another technique that has been known to produce rapid muscle gains and strength, and that is it leverages the eccentric or negative portion of the rep, which completely blows every other exercise and resistance training product out of the water. Go to shrnetwork.biz/ARX and discover the future of resistance training. Never before has a product been so appropriately named as Botanic Tonics Feel Free. This plant-based elixir combines a variety of different effective compounds, all from raw plant materials that at different doses provide you with completely different experiences. A third of a bottle puts you in the zone and makes you very focused and is ideal for a non-stimulating pre-workout. It also has a mild analgesic effect for us older lifters who have soreness and little pains and aches that keep us from training as ferociously as we want. A half a bottle will create a mild euphoric effect that will allow you to forego consuming alcohol, but still be socially lubricated and have fun. I have never had a product deliver on its name the way Botanic Tonics Feel Free does, and I won't ever be without it, and you shouldn't either. Go to shrnetwork.biz/feelfree and use the code SHR40 for 40% off your first order. I promise you, you will not be disappointed.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where brawn and brains finally meet.
Hey, welcome back. Before we start back, I got to mention something. Those of you who know why I keep saying I'll be off the air by 2024, if you're interested in hearing about a really interesting investment called Gun Leash, Gun Leash keeps people from losing their guns. 500,000 guns are lost a year. 15% of them are then used in the commission of a crime. We can actually reduce 75,000 guns from falling into the hands of criminals. I'm launching in December. We're still doing an angel fund round right now. You must be an accredited investor. If you don't know what that is, I can explain it to you. SEC 506C. Email me at onair@Superhuman Radio if you'd like to learn more and all the details. And we're going to have some fun changing the world, making it safer for gun owners. Okay, let's get back to it. Let's get some of these questions up. Some fascinating questions. Some of them I don't understand. Richard Miller, let me get his up here first. He wants to know, he says, this is freaking amazing. How do I make Dr. Baxter my PCP? She is so smart. Is she on social media? I mean, PCP was a drug I did in high school, so I don't know what PCP means other than that.
Primary care provider. That I think that's my dad. Thanks, Dad. I appreciate that.
No, he's a good guy. I know him. He listens to the show all the time.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
I was never a primary care provider. I was always emergency and then always pediatrics.
Okay. Remind me of a study with participants who reported less heartache after a breakup while taking acetaminophen because emotional pain and physical pain resonate in the same places. That's fascinating. Is that true? Maybe that's why people drink.
Well, I mean, I think it's almost more take it the other direction. It's that that suffering and sadness impact both the physical perception of pain and emotional pain, and so you've got multiple parts of the brain that are engaged in both.
And then he also good. Yes. Oh, you want to?
I didn't tell him about the new understanding of the frequencies.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about that. Let's talk about. I just want to get his other comment up here, and then Marsha Meeks Johnson has questions about knee replacement surgery and pain. He says a day at the range dealing with recoil from shooting always made me feel different in an unexplainable way. The same thing happens to me above 100 miles an hour on my motorcycle. It's really freaky. My focus gets tighter. Really, it's better than a cup of coffee. It wakes me up. Anyway, talk about the frequencies. Yes.
All right. Well, so to the point of both shooting range and also being on a motorcycle. So one of the earliest neurologists, Charcot, in 1872, published a paper about Parkinson's disease because he found that the patients who came on a carriage on bumpy cobblestones, their Parkinson's was improved for hours after their arrival. So vibration was first presented in a plate that people could be on to mimic that. Then, then one of his students did a helmet for migraines. So this is the cool thing that has been discovered. So I told you that, it's like the vibration worked and the cold worked, and they're doing two different areas of the brain. Well, so 2012, someone found that each of those different touch receptors responds to a different frequency. But the important thing is that that each of those frequencies is responsible for a different amount of pain relief. And of course, if you think about when you bang your hand with a hammer, you don't want light touch. You shake it like this. And so the deal is that we've been using TENS units in electrical current, and it's the wrong frequency. And so the frequency that you need is almost exclusively found in something called the Pacinian corpuscles. And so what's really cool about that is that Nikola Tesla also said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think about frequency and vibration and energy. And so there's different frequencies of mechanical stimulation, like vibration, that we've been using. Different frequencies do different things. So if you're using really low frequency on a plate, like they did with the Parkinson's with Dr. Charcot, then it's 30 to 50 hertz. If you're doing delayed onset muscle soreness, so 5 minutes of a lower frequency vibration before working out can decrease delayed onset muscle soreness. But if you want to do pain, across the board, it's the Pacinian corpuscle, and it's going to be 180 to 250 hertz. And this is why when we started doing our 200 hertz devices, if the batteries got low, they didn't work as much. And that's why. Wow. And this is all 2017. And so so this is so new that we don't have a whole lot of people who know this in the medical industry. And certainly, so there's a study that this guy who does practical pain management, he just, out of the goodness of his heart, tried TENS units versus VibraCool, not even with ice, just the vibration unit, in a crossover trial. And VibraCool was 3.4 times better for overuse injuries and twice as good for arthritis, and everything else was kind of between those two compared to TENS. But it's not hitting, TENS is not hitting the right frequency, it's not hitting the right receptors, and that's why TENS units have always been disappointing, because they're being in the wrong place.
What about PEMF? Is there any place for pain management with pulse electromagnetic fields?
Yeah, I think there's so many different areas for physics medicine that are coming up. So PEMF is kind of doing what an MRI is doing, where it's very subtly moving the water shifting inside the cells. The PEMF studies that have been best have worked for visceral pain. So post-labor, post-hysterectomy, but areas where you've got a lot less structural bone around. So vibration is going to transmit well through bone. So it's going to be better for tighter tissues. So PEMF, thus far, the studies are better in more visceral, more liquidy kind of areas. But it's a much longer thing. I mean, the right frequency of vibration, you stick it on and it feels better on contact.
I have a vibration plate at home. I don't use it. I bought it because it's supposed to make, when I had the neuropathic pain in my feet, it was supposed to make them better, but I didn't use it enough. But it goes up to 180 hertz. So maybe I'll start playing with it.
Well, and not only that, but 150 hertz and up is where you start to vasodilate. So when you've got claudication.
Oh, I got to use that for claudation. Yes.
Yeah. So, and you can do double duty. So long as it's over 150, you get both. So Marcia, I actually have a video I did about knee replacement, talking about prehab.
Let me read the question for the people who are listening. Marsha Meeks Johnson on Facebook said, had knee replacement 8 weeks ago. How do I relieve the pain and swelling? Lying in bed as we speak, icing my knee. Thank you. Oh, poor thing. I feel bad for her.
Yeah. So I am very biased, but I would do a couple things in addition to going on the website and getting the VibraCool, which is $60, and we've got a 20% off that we put with hot packs because multimodal. But if that's not possible, try to find a high frequency vibration unit around and use really thin ice packs, about 20 minutes out of every 2 hours. Motion actually helps decrease pain the most possible. So if you can move around, weight bearing is helpful, but also doing planning different activities. There's also on our website, we've got a whole pain plan book. Magnesium, for all the reasons I mentioned before. So 250 to 500 milligrams is a good place to start. It'll take about 3 days for it to really kick in well, but you can go up to 1,000, and the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to get some runny stools. The swelling part, again, you need to be moving as much as possible. So if you can get the pain under control and move and get the magnesium for anti-inflammatory, those things will start helping a lot.
And this is not Dr. Baxter talking, okay? But if you have access to peptides, BPC 157, body protection complex, and MGF, mechano growth factor, injected at 500 micrograms of each, as close to the injury as possible, subcutaneous. I helped the guy, I'm not going to mention his name. He's a competitive powerlifter. He sheared 2 quadricep muscles and had them reattached, and he just deadlifted 715 pounds the other day, and this is just 3 months after the surgery. So the peptides are magic. If you know how to get them, I would look into them. Cola Quench says, is this effective for migraines?
So if the question is VibraCool effective for migraines? It depends on what's causing it. If it's a tension migraine, then putting the ice and vibration or occipital neuralgia on the back of the neck, yes. Otherwise, if it's caused by the inflammatory cascade that happens with most migraines, I would definitely go for magnesium, because I love it. And also butterbur is something that has been shown to be as effective as the triptans in preventing migraines. But most migraines are going to be those inflammatory. And so if you have an aura or sound is loud, then you do not want to be using the ice vibration option. Ice by itself decreases the flow of blood going in, can help with the inflammatory part, but vibration only if it's tension or occipital neuralgia.
So Dr. Elena Gross has appeared on the show a few times. She travels around the world now. She's doing groundbreaking work in migraines. Migraines are a result of hypoglycemia at the brain. Your blood sugar running through your veins may be fine, but there's not enough glucose getting to your brain. And in fact, in the 1920s, they called migraines, before they were called migraines, they called them hypoglycemic headaches. What works really good and is effective is if you have access to ketones, ketone esters or ketone salts. When people have migraines, they know. It's like, oh, it's coming. They'll see the aura. Like I get visual migraines when I'm exhausted. If I've trained too long and my blood sugar starts dropping, it looks like a drop of water on a windshield dancing, and the next thing you know, it looks like a puddle, and it's always on the periphery of my left visual field. Ketones, boom, they'll go away. In fact, the ketogenic diet is very effective for people who have chronic migraines all the time. Ketone bodies really work well. Let's see, we have a couple more questions. Taylor C says, do you prefer it to a specific type of magnesium?
So there's actually a good study looking at a whole bunch of different over-the-counter formulations, mag citrate, mag gluconate. There's only about a 10% difference in bioavailability. So I recommend the cheapest that you can find. One thing that I learned, because we have started being in CVS, one thing I learned is that the supplements that they have on the shelves there have to go through a bioavailability and truth in reporting test before they let them on the shelves. So CVS is the only pharmacy that I know of that requires that in their brands. So you don't need to buy it from CVS. Just make sure it's a brand also sold by CVS, and it will add that kind of testing. But it doesn't matter which brand, so long as or what formulation, they're barely any different.
And last comment from Marsha Meeks Johnson. She's currently using BPC 157 and thymosin beta 4, otherwise known as TB 500. And see if your physician, because if you're doing 0.1 ml, it's compounded. It's coming from a compounding pharmacist. Ask your physician to also get for you IGF-1 EC, which is mechano growth factor, and you'll heal a lot faster. But okay, that's good. And thank you.
And Marsha, I'm sure that Carl has your contact information, but we have a link to this on our website, and it's a free download. It's a workbook. But because it's gone on for such a long time, I actually would make a dedicated effort to planning for the next 3 or 4 days, events every hour or half hour that you can look forward to, and make a group of things that will take your mind off of thinking about the pain, because that will then activate your anterior cingulate cortex, which is going to decrease the pain. So I fell into the same trap of, oh, here's what I can tell you to take by mouth, but actually doing some of the work to come up with distracting things like watching this podcast, those can reduce the pain by half. So do that as well.
And is that at the general website where your products are?
It is. It's on the general website under downloads, and it's called What Works for Pain.
And the general website can be gotten to very easily by going to shrnetwork.biz/paincare. You'll find all the products and stuff you want there. So go there, Marsha. Okay, I think we've covered a lot, huh?
We have definitely covered territory. You know so much. I really want to have the studies on the BPC 157. I am. I'll send you. The whole hypoglycemic thing is new as well. I mean, the whole inflammatory cascade and the biologics for it, but it's still, those are triggered with hypoglycemic environments. So
yeah, it's amazing. It really is. Let's see. Did somebody? I don't want to leave anybody's question. Still doing therapy and working my ass off, Marsha says. Great. Thanks so much. Yeah, that's it. Stay in motion. Things that, what's that old saying? Things at rest tend to stay at rest, and things in motion tend to stay in motion.
Yeah.
Be a thing that stays in motion. So much fun having you on. Really. Thank you for being here today.
I learned so much.
Yeah, so did I. All right. Thank you very much. Take care. And we are going to say goodbye for today. Let me think. I know we have some great. We have a show on plasmapheresis with Dr. Irina Conboy coming up. They take plasma out of your body and they replace it with synthetic plasma. I guess synthetic, I don't know how they make it, but it reduces all the markers of aging dramatically. And, we've talked about blood donation. I'm a big fan of blood donation. I think it keeps you young. It gets the gunk out. Regular blood donation makes new stem cells that come from the bone marrow. But now they're fooling around with actually something called plasmapheresis, and it may actually be a real anti-aging thing, something that truly does reverse aging. I think that's next week, but we have a bunch of great shows coming up. So don't forget, share the show. Always share the show. You never know who you're going to help. And we will see you soon with more Superhuman Radio. Thank you.